listening to the Punisher Waterfowls, the Union 0430 podcast. Brought to you by Real Geese Decoys, the most technological advanced silhouette decoys on the market. And Vortex Canada, the force of optics.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Union 0430. I got to tell you, this has been a year in the making. And I got to tell you, it's been a year in the making. And JJ, who I'm sure you're going to find out about, is what I call busier than a two-peckered dog. So just an amazingly busy individual. And he managed to carve some time to hang out with us today. So JJ, thanks so much for coming on. We're a little light tonight with regards to Mark and Phil not being on with us. A little bit different of a time that we're doing the show just to accommodate JJ, but we're going to get through it and it's going to be an awesome show. So JJ from Lifetime Decoys, thanks for coming on. Dave's up in Kincardine. You're welcome. Jeff Coots, that's just for you, brother. JJ, tell us where you're at, buddy.
I'm down here in Houston, Texas. So I work kind of all over the place. I like to say that I keep my stuff in a house in Houston, but otherwise I'm in the truck on the road pretty much like the entirety of the year. The longest span, I moved into this house in July. The longest span I've been in this house is 4 days at a time. So it's interesting. It's a lot of fun though.
That's nuts. So just a quick intro for anybody that don't know JJ. So JJ is the director of, I got to make sure I get this right, director of business development for Lifetime Decoys. Been involved in the waterfowl industry for a long time with some pretty big companies. When you think about Sitka and Yeti and Rig'em Right, he spends all, and he really isn't joking when he's talking about all the time that he spends on the road, just like that traveling salesman and just constantly knocking on doors and out with the outfitters and everything like this. So it's going to be a great show, ladies and gentlemen. As always, make sure that if you have any questions after you listen to the show, put them in the comments. Dave and I will fire them back off to JJ and we'll get you the answers that you're looking for. You know what? I think JJ may be the first, correct me if I'm wrong, semi-pro athlete. I know he's not pro athlete, but he's semi-pro. No. But you know, he played college ball. And when I was in the States training with the military, like in Canada, you know, when you introduce yourself in the military, you say, well, you know, I'm from here and I'm from here and I did this and I did that. In the States, when I was in Fort Leonard Wood, the only people that were really given any attention were the people that said, yeah, I played college ball. I played college ball. And then they were like, oh, okay, this guy's the real deal. He played college ball. So hey, it's awesome. It's awesome.
What, wasn't Matty Wilson pretty good at hockey?
I don't know.
Am I thinking of the right guy?
I don't know.
We had someone on that was like hockey. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways,
JJ, you mentioned Texas and the way that I kind of, so for those that don't know, like Jeff Coates is a bit of a fanboy for us, or I guess we're his fans, but I kept seeing this Texas teal and I'm like, dude, I need an invite to that shit because that looks awesome.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, I know the Lifetime guy. Do you want to talk to him? And that's how JJ and I got introduced. And JJ, tell us what it's like hunting with the man, Jeff.
Oh, it's awesome. I can't believe like he's got his phone out at all times. He's chronicling everything. He gives a perfect summary. He makes everybody, I think if you go and watch his stuff, you can see like what it feels like. He gives good little interviews, good little anecdotes. It's awesome. I don't think since I've been down there, I'm usually like, I'm hosting and taking care of 1,012 people. I'm making sure everybody's getting to their blinds. Like we're hunting at my boss's property. So the last 2 years, we've had so many guests and stuff. Jeff and their crew, they've gone with other guides or outfitters like in the area. So I haven't got to hunt with him, but he comes and hangs out. Him and the rest of his crew, they come and hang out at my boss's family property, I guess. for the entirety of teal season. So they get all the drinking and skeet shooting and all that. They get all the fun stuff with us, and then they go kill birds elsewhere. But ends up working out for everybody, it seems.
And the meals that you guys put on, like you guys have professional chefs and stuff, it looks like, eh?
Yeah. So when I came on 2 years ago, like for whatever reason, like events just really fire me up. And we did a lot of that stuff with the run and gun tour with Sitka and Yeti and Rig 'em Right. But like food is the easiest way to a person's heart. It's the easiest way to make them feel like welcome and at home. So we have plenty of food and plenty of drink. We had a guy out, his name is Bart Likes, and I ran into him just middle of nowhere, Arkansas, through a mutual friend of mine. He's a guide for one of my favorite outfitters, and we met in Arkansas. And this was, right before Bart was about to start on a new venture. He's got a huge cook trailer. It's like 32 feet, completely like professional kitchen. Like if you go into this thing, you literally feel like you're in a 5-star restaurant's kitchen. It is the most immaculate, beautiful thing you've ever seen. And so I met Bart and I got to tour his trailer. He'd only had it for like a week or two. And I was like, this guy's going to be something. So if y'all haven't met Bart or talked to Bart or anything, you should definitely have Bart on. Like his story's amazing.
Following him
but anyway.
yeah, I've been following him for a while. I was following him as when he was just sort of kind of, I don't want to say doing it for fun, but he wasn't as serious as what he is now. Like now he's full on, right?
Yeah, he's serious. And so he had a deal with an outfitter. Then he ran meals for like a snow goose season. So really quick deal there. And then he's done some stuff for another big lodge, pretty famous operation. But I had seen Bart, and at the time he was really under the radar, and I was like, this is the most interesting dude in the world. Like his story has to be told, and he has to meet my friends. Like what my friends, like our business contacts, whatever, can do for this dude, like, we can shoot him into the stratosphere. So I had him come down to Texas Teal, and that's the whole premise of Texas Teal. It's we just want to get people together. We want people to know each other. Some folks might be competitors. Some people, might be complementary in their brand or their product. But we just want to get everybody together and show like, we're here doing the same things. And the great thing about, and because we love it, but the great thing about Texas Teal is it's the first opportunity that people, at least in the States, have to go and shoot birds. And so these last 2 years with COVID, people weren't really able to go to Canada as easily. And so it was really easy. Like everybody wanted to come to Texas Teal. And now it's become a big enough thing where people are kind of clamoring for an invite. And now we got to be careful we don't hurt feelings or exclude people or whatever, because the weekends are growing, the event is growing, and we only have a certain amount of days, a certain amount of beds, all that. So it'll be tough, but I think all of our friends understand, like, we're growing and we love them just the same, whether they get to come to this weekend every year or not.
And that's kind of the beautiful thing about your Texas Teal, is that you're not looking to grow, like, while the individual brands are growing, you're kind of trying to grow the whole sport of waterfowling. And that's kind of what really got me going with following all the guys that went to that Texas Teal. That was especially Bart and his new little side-by-side with the camp chef or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, you saw that? He just dropped that. Like, he sent me a picture of it a week or two ago, and then he put it on social media this week. For him. But yeah, I mean, even that's a perfect example. He met Garrett Walker, the owner of Quack Rack, up at Texas Teal. Quack Rack and Lifetime have been super tight since the beginning. That's actually, I met Garrett Walker, the owner of Quack Rack, on a hunt when I was on the run and gun tour, and he actually called the guys at Lifetime and he was like, hey, you got to meet this guy. He's from Texas. He went to A&M. The founders of Lifetime are both Aggies. And so he was like, you got to meet him. But anyway, yeah, Bart got to meet the Quack Rack dudes there. He got to meet Sloan Brown, works for Yeti. So he's got a Yeti on the back of that deal. And then TJ Kimbrell, the guy who hooked him up with his new side-by-side, he's one of Garrett's big clients. So that Texas Teal, like, it's amazing how everybody's networks kind of intertwine, and a lot of the relationships you're seeing now that are blossoming, like they started the very first time was down in Texas. So it's cool. Like we get to pat ourselves on the back a little bit and look and say like what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish is working.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I talked to Jeff Coates fairly often. And that was one thing I remember maybe a year ago. That was one thing that he was really talking about then was, listen, why can't we all promote one another, even though we're all in the same industry, we're all, you know, we're all really trying to get the same piece of the pie. But why can't we promote one another? And I was like, I think it's a brilliant idea. Says the little guy up in Canada, right? But
Sure.
But it just goes to show the people that you're bringing in. Like you got Quack Rack coming in, you got Lifetime Decoys, and then the whole hockey sock full of other people that's all jumping on board of this Texas deal. And like everything else, right? Like once something becomes big, well, then all the people start knocking on the doors and stuff. Sure. And that puts you guys at such an amazing position. And I think most people get it. Like if you were to say, well, listen, we got to bring these guys in this year or whatever. It is what it is, right? It's a networking weekend where people get together, have some fun, eat well, have some drinks, and shoot some birds. And so you guys are in a great position to, you know, really pick who you want to align with.
Yep, for sure. And it's funny, like the last thing at the end of the day that anybody cares about really is the birds. Like it's wild. People are traveling hours and hours, spending tons of money to get there. And the thing that everybody leaves with a smile on their faces, regardless of how many birds they killed, or, you know, we've been known to have some guys sleep in to stay up a little too late and just not make the call. But those guys are just as happy. They may be feeling a little queasy early in the morning, but those guys are just as happy as everybody else, whether they killed birds or not. So that's just what's so cool about it. Like at the end of the day, everybody on this weekend specifically, you know, these are guys that are hunting almost every day of the season, or, you know, if they're a brand guy, they might not get out as much, but they get to hunt as much as they want. So it's a refreshing, you know, situation for them to be able to go and spend time with, you know, buddies who are doing the same things that they're doing and they may not have ever met before. So yeah, Texas Teal, I'm really, really grateful that I kind of get to head that up. That's probably my favorite part of my job, those 3 weeks in September.
So we'd be pretty stupid not to have a discussion about the actual Lifetime Decoys product when JJ's on. Like, it's great talking about all that, but the main reason we have you on is because these are by far my favorite decoys right now. So for those that don't know, probably didn't hear that. But,
nice.
So they have a full product line. They've got mallards. They've got the mallards with the flocked heads. They've got pintail. They've got blue wing, green wing teal. They now have an early season teal package with just the hens in it. They have a goose set. They might be coming out with something new, but these things are great.
So before I give the spiel, why do you like them? What's special about them?
Anyone that knows, I hunt out of a kayak. Most of the time it's out of a kayak. And when I'm hunting out of that kayak and I have my decoys in that boat, I don't want the weight of those decoys to affect me at all. I'm a big boy, and I know that I could lose a bit of weight and probably help a bit more than
I'm right there with you.
Right. You know what I'm saying? But like, these decoys are like, what, 11 ounces with no weights in them? Yeah. They have the dual keel.
Just depends on the species. Yeah.
It depends on the species. Right. But so they're super lightweight. I can take them out. The other big thing I do is I take a lot of young kids out on their first hunts. I do a lot of youth, first hunts with youth. Nice. And if I take out a plastic decoy, I won't say any brands or anything, but when I take out a plastic decoy, if they shoot it, it's like, well, guess I'm buying a new decoy, right? But these things, they're made out of Crocs, and the crock material, I guess I should say. So when they hit it, it's not as, you know, and I found that the first season that I took kids out, one of the kids shot a plastic decoy, and I thought it was hilarious, but the kid felt pretty upset about it.
Yeah.
And this way with these, it's like they can shoot and they don't have to worry about the decoys. It's just another thing that we don't have to worry about. So those are kind of some of my reasons. Another thing I like about it is the fact that I don't have to spend extra money on a set of field ducks, if that makes sense. For those that don't know, like they have, so this is their widgeon, but they have the dual keel, and you can actually just set them right on the ground, and you've got your field flock. So that's another thing. I like to kind of dual purpose everything that I can, right? So
yeah. So
anyway,
that's an interesting piece. Not a lot of people are doing. And I don't hunt fields a ton. We're usually over water just because we're making floaters right now. But it's an interesting thing. Like not a lot of people are doing that yet, but I think it's starting to catch on a little bit here and there. So
yeah. And that's, you know, anyone that hunts with the normal single keel, we posted a few times about like you can go to the dollar store and pick up one of those paper towel racks, fold it in half, and then slide your keel on there.
Yep.
Well, then that's just more stuff. Like you have to carry those racks and have another bag for that. And
yeah, pain in the
this,
butt.
yeah, I have my 24 decoys for this, and I don't even have to take my rigging off. You just, they're hollow on the inside. So they're hollow on the inside. So all you got to do is just stuff your weight and your rigs in there, which you also make some pretty excellent weight and rigs, right?
that's where Lifetime got its start for sure. So we'd be remiss not to mention that. That's where Lifetime came about, is making the coated cable rig, no memory and all that. But yes, you did an amazing job. We should hire you. I should bring you on the road with me. That's like
do it.
Get rundown.
So I wanted, so that's great. So I've heard this story from Dave, or this spiel from Dave many times. I hunted out of a big XL boat and a mud buddy and the whole bit. So Dave's edited a NuCanoe, and I've heard about Lifetime decoys so much from Dave. So it's awesome. The thing that, and what I really love is the fact that, and we sort of alluded to it before we hit the record button, JJ, but there's been, for so long, there hasn't been any innovation to the duck decoy. And you know, we've talked about it on this show a number of times, like what's going to be the next big thing? Like what's going to be the thing where the hunters go and they say, I got to get it. Like the last thing I can remember was when Mojo and Lucky Duck come out with spinners. Everybody needed to have them, but now you guys have innovated. So 2019, I think, 2019, you guys came out with this decoy, and it is a game changer because it is so light. And listen, not everybody is driving around in a boat and don't have to worry about load carriage.
Yep.
And now you guys come in and totally change the game, and guys like Dave and even me, like I've hunted over them, but you've totally changed the game when it comes to weight management and load carriage. It's really impressive.
For sure. Well, thank you. I think, you know, the decoy came about almost by accident. What you mentioned earlier, they're made out of Crocs. Like the original idea for the decoy came about as somebody just jumped in the water and that pair of Crocs slipped off their foot and it floated up to the top. And our founder, Peter, thought, that's interesting. Like, why wouldn't anybody have ever made a decoy out of that? So he had already started with the rigging in 2014. So they were kind of already in the business, in the waterfowl business. But yeah, probably my favorite aspect about them is how light they are. I do a lot of public land stuff, a lot of walk-in stuff. And then also, you know, we're in the boat, we're racing, we're trying to get there as quick as we possibly can. And that load matters, of course, like ounces and pounds matter. Ounces really matter when you're having to walk miles and miles like we did in Arkansas at the beginning of this season just to find some water. So it just depends on the species, but we're between 5.5 to 7.5 pounds lighter per dozen on all of our duck species. Like, that's an incredible amount. You can add an additional dozen decoys to your back on your pack-in. Like, you can bring 2 or 3 dozen decoys, whereas a guy might only have wanted to carry a dozen at one point. So that's what I like about them the most. And then because they're light, when you throw them out on the water, you're going to get a ton of movement in a low wind situation or in a high wind situation. Those things are just going to dance. And I mean, you've got movement that looks almost real. So that's the great part about them being foam and being light. The other part too is, when a decoy gets cold, and we're talking about the boat or the kayak, I've got buddies who are stepping on the decoys, sitting on the decoys. Like, I don't have a seat in my boat. I've got an Excel with a mud buddy on the back, and we don't have seats or boxes or bins or anything. Like, people just ride on the decoys. They lay on the decoys. We got a good picture of my dad this year. We had a pretty long ride home, and my dad fell asleep on the decoys. So they're just there. It's a nice bed on the front there. But yeah, it's what I like to say when I'm talking to somebody to explain it is, you can run over them, you can step on them, shoot them, or cut them up into 8 pieces and throw those 8 pieces in the water. And those 8 pieces are going to float because the material they're made of inherently floats. And I think that allows somebody to kind of grasp and conceptualize what it is that we're talking about here.
And you touched on it when you talked about the movement that you get out of these. Like, everyone's like, oh, we got to have movement on the water and jerk rigs, which is another thing you guys do really well.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand. Like, I had a video from 2 years ago in 2020 when we were hunting in a big group, and I brought 2 dozen Lifetimes, and they were just spread out in the mixture of this. There was no wind. And just from that little bit of breeze and a little bit of current that was going on the lake that day, I had a video and I posted it on my Instagram, so you can go back and find it, but you can just see,
I might have to go find it.
A few little birds here and there are just floating and moving. And then you see a whole bunch that are stationary, but it just created enough movement that we actually had a great hunt out of it. And that movement is a pretty big key that people need to start looking at.
Yep, absolutely.
So the one thing that people do talk about that's tough with them is, it's not like those weighted keels, unless you keep the weights in it. It's not like the weighted keels where you can throw them out and they'll self right.
Yep.
But as soon as you have them up, it's almost like that hollow core almost vacuum seals them into the water. So you just have to kind of place them if you don't have the weights in the bottom.
Yeah.
Unless you know a trick.
So I do know a trick to get them all to lay out correctly, even if you're not throwing with the weights. But first, I would probably try to explain when you want to use the weights and when you don't. From my personal experience and preference is, I don't like to run weights on the decoys hardly ever. I like more movement on the water. And usually I'm hunting in places where I'm able to go out and flip the decoys over. We're probably going to adjust the spread anyway. I think there's very few guys who throw their decoys out and they're like, yes, I think those are 100% perfect the way I threw them out. It seems that somebody's always going to go get wet and get in their waders, and they're going to go make some adjustments. So for me, the few decoys that don't flip over on their own when you're running them without the weights, I think that's an okay thing. The time that you would want to run your decoys with weights is if you were in, really heavy current, maybe hunting on the coast somewhere. We had a hunt this year, coldest hunt I've been on, negative 17-degree wind chill, really cold. We were in North Dakota, but the wind was blowing really hard on the river. And the first time that we noticed that the decoys were flipping over was somewhere between 23 and 27 miles an hour. At 23 miles an hour, everything was still riding properly. And then about an hour later, we noticed there were a few decoys that had flipped over, and we looked and it was 27 miles an hour at that point. So somewhere between 23 and 27 miles an hour is when you definitely need need to be running the weights. But if your listeners or you or anybody's looking for a trick, I can grab a decoy. So these things, obviously they're hollow. If you were to just throw your decoy out and it doesn't have the weight, sometimes it can land like this on the side, whatever. When you've got the keel weights in it, they'll automatically flip over. But what you'll end up doing if you want to move really quickly and you want everything to land properly is you'll grab your decoy and sling it like low to the water sideways, and it'll end up hitting the water and it'll end up spinning itself. And most of the time it'll end up landing correctly. Whereas if you throw your decoy out like you typically would, just throwing it up into the air, it can land straight down one way or the other. But if you kind of throw it like you're skipping a rock almost, the decoy will spin and turn, and it's weird. It's actually a buddy of mine, my roommate, he plays baseball professionally, so he doesn't live here anymore. He's at spring training now, but he was like, this is how you do that. And I was like, wow, you're right, 100%. So John Doxakis, he's the one who showed me how to throw my decoys properly.
Have you ever had anybody, so for those that don't know, to take the weights in and out, there's just a little bolt system here on the side with the weight.
Yep. Have
you ever had anyone show you using the bolt with their Texas rig on that so that it's a sideways mount?
I've had people ask if they could or should do that. I've never seen it. I would probably discourage people from doing that just because our stainless steel eye bolt and washer design, we tested it a bunch of different ways, but this looks like the strongest. I think we did some pretty rudimentary tests in the warehouse when we were trying to figure out the best way to mount these things. And our first failure was at 165 pounds. We just kept adding a rig onto these until they broke. And our first failure, I think we did like a dozen decoys with this design. Our first failure was 165 pounds. And I think we got to like 204 or 205 for a couple of them. So that's the best way to connect them. So I would say probably use those stainless steel eye bolts and washers. But if somebody wanted to do them to the keels, I'm sure you could. I'm sure it's possible. Tell me why somebody would want to do that.
No, someone came up with the idea a couple weeks ago, like if you attach to where that bolt was, that it would actually make it self-righting somehow. And
that's interesting.
I was just asking if you'd ever heard that or seen that.
Yeah.
I don't do it because
that there might be some validity there. The other part about having a decoy when it doesn't have its weights installed to have it self-right is the longer the rig, the more unlikely that decoy is to self-right.
Right.
So if you think about it, you throw a decoy out there with a 2.5 foot rig on it, the weight is more likely to get taut in that short amount of time where it's in the air, and that weight will kind of tug the decoy down. Whereas if you're throwing a 4 foot or a 6 foot rig, it's less likely to get tight and tug the decoy down. So those are probably some nitty gritty details that nobody cares about, but important in terms of experience.
Before we move on to talking about your rigging setups, when are we going to expect divers to come around, huh?
So divers are coming this year. I'm super excited about it. It's a world that we haven't ever got to play in before. Redheads on the Texas coast, they're a big deal here. That's been my very limited experience diver hunting. So I'm going to be leaning on Jeff Coots. We've been talking to Jeff for a couple years as we've gone through this process of figuring out what is this species lineup going to end up looking like. But yeah, we'll be releasing a few diver species this year. We're just so excited for that because, like you talked about earlier, if you water swat a decoy and you're diver hunting, like you're going to lose those decoys for sure, 100%, unless you're doing a foam or a wood or something like that. You just hunting with a plastic decoy is not sustainable when you're diver hunting. But now we've got these decoys that are so much lighter and they can take, ostensibly infinite shots. Like, it just depends on how bad and rough you want your decoys to look, but they'll take shots for as long as you want to run them.
JJ, I did want to ask about the divers. So in my experience with the divers, so I'll hunt, you know, I call them ponds or like small bodies of water. But when I get out onto the bigger water chasing divers, it's usually a lot more windier. Does that make sense? A lot more? Is that good English? I'm from Newfoundland, so so is there any difference to your weight and your keel system for the divers just to handle that bigger chop of water and the more wind, or is it all working out?
Really good question. So we've decided to install all of our weights in the divers from the factory. We made the decision to not install the weights in all of the other decoys because we really want to encourage folks to run them without the weights. But in our divers, with a guy that's more than likely going to be on the coast with heavy wind, dealing with waves or chop or something, we figured we'll make it easy, especially if a guy's going to be running 10 or 15 dozen decoys. You don't want a guy opening 20 to 30 boxes of decoys and having to screw weights into all of them. So we're going to do that on the manufacturing side for those folks. Cool. We've also considered potentially increasing the size of the weight in the divers. You know, we're running a fine line of how light do you want to go versus, you know, a decoy is rendered useless if it's just going to flip over. So we want to make sure that we toe that fine line. We haven't finished our experiments and figuring out like exactly how heavy are we going to need to go. But that's something we're looking into. We've got a couple different weight options we're going to play with.
So what about Coots? Are you going to bring up Coots?
Tell me why we should make a Coot.
So I don't think you need to, but I'm part of a kayak duck hunting group.
Yep.
And I just asked, I said, hey, any questions? Let me know so I can talk about it. Yep. And someone replied, are they coming out with Coot decoys? So I figured, you know what? I'll get it out there. I'll ask just for the fan, but
I really want a Coot decoy. It's probably the bane of my boss's existence, me asking about a Coot decoy and asking for a Coot decoy. In Texas, you know, especially on the Texas coast, it's like you really ought to have some. And in a lot of places, like I had a retailer, he's been asking about Coots ever since I came on board. And he said, what does it take to get a Coot made? And I was like, I don't know, like probably a container. And he goes, okay, well, tell me how many boxes are in a container. And he seems interested. I brought it to the bosses. Our manufacturing capability is at its max capacity right now. But we're growing every day. Our manufacturers are growing every day. So I don't think that a Coot is too far off. I don't know. My bosses are going to get final say, but I'd love to have one. I think it's a fairly easy layup if you think about it. It's just, it's a black piece of EVA and we've got to make a little bit of paint change one way or the other. And they're relatively small. So I don't know. I'd love to make the addition.
As long as you don't have to make those, as long as you don't have to make those fucking creepy legs those feet that they got, you'll be all right.
Yeah, we're gonna pass
that's that's the engineering feat you got to get over right there. Just try and make those friggin' feet.
So one of the other products that you guys have that I absolutely love is the jerk rig system. And it's a bit different for those that don't know. So
this guy came so prepared. I love this.
Yeah.
So
he sleeps with those things, man. I'm telling you.
I got to get it somewhere.
Married man. I hear you, buds.
So the jerk rig system's a bit different than the normal jerk rigs. And normally the jerk rig has right attached to it the points that you can clip your decoys to. Yep. You guys came out with the innovation that it's almost like a long line where you clip your decoy itself, has like a little mini long line clip.
Yep.
And you just clip that anywhere. So you can position, you could have 3 duck butts close together. You could have them spread apart as far as you want. You can and where did that thought come from?
So I don't know where the jerk rig originated. That's one of the only questions I don't think I've ever gotten, and I haven't ever asked. The jerk rig was the only thing from Lifetime that I was using before I joined the company. I was using just whatever rigs, and the decoy hadn't come out yet. But I've always said like the jerk rig might be our best product, and so we've made an addition, a subtraction, a change here and there every year. And I think now we finally have the perfect jerk rig. So you actually showed one that's a little bit different from what we're going to be offering, moving forward. You showed your line has only a single crimp on it.
Yep.
And what I noticed when I was using it, especially with our decoys, because they're hollow, so that's the swivel. If you pull a little bit further,
back before it, there's just the single.
Yep. So what we ended up doing is putting a second crimp there, so that you could clip the decoy right in between those two. What I was finding is if I was really working it, the decoy was going to end up sliding backwards or forwards on that line. And so I really wanted that decoy to stay stationary. That way, when I gave it even just a little bit of a tug, it was gonna move like immediately. So we made that change, and then we decreased the size of the weight. I don't know what weight you might have on that, but it was just way too heavy a weight for me. It was way too big. Great for guys who are hunting in heavy current or something that maybe they're in the sand. It's not something that can dig in very well, but from my perspective, I think a smaller weight, it's just got those grappling hooks on it. I think it works better, especially for the hiking guy, which is what our brand is all about. So those are the changes we've made. And now I would say there's nothing I want to change about the jerk rig. And I think that's a weird place to find yourself as a brand, is to say like, this product is almost perfect, but I have ragged my bosses for 2 years about every little tweak and every little change to the jerk rig, and they finally relented. They've given me everything I asked for, and so I'm pretty happy with it.
So do you, like, normally with a jerk rig setup, because those clips are built right onto the jerk rig, you kind of have a jerk rig with decoys permanently attached to it.
Right.
Do you ever find guys? So what I do, I have a few duck butts that just have the jerk rig set up, but I also have some decoys where I have my Texas rig on the one side, and on the other side, I'll have this little clip. And that way, if it's a day that, if there's a lot of wind and I'm going to see a lot of motion from all my decoys anyway, I won't bring the jerk rig, but I can still bring all of my decoys.
Yep.
Is that something that you find people doing?
Yep. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. For me, being a decoy salesman, I kind of have unlimited decoys. And so I do have like 6 or 12 dedicated jerk rig decoys, but I also run those jerk rig drops on a couple sets of my decoys, just standard, in case I left those 6 decoys back on the boat, or we forgot them, or something happens, whatever. I've got a backup plan. But I think for 99% of hunters, that's probably what you're going to see folks doing. They're just going to have those little jerk rig drops hanging from the backs or fronts of their decoys. They don't get in the way. They don't get tangled. We shorten those up. That was another change that we made last year. So now they're pretty unencumbering. That's the right way to run them, I would say.
And I find it's good that when you're out in the field, if you find that the wind conditions change and all of a sudden you got to run your jerk rig, you can have that little jerk rig setup packed, and then pick up the decoys that you have the little clip on and set it up within minutes. So you kind of have that versatility a little bit too, right?
Absolutely. That's my thing. Like, everybody, I think, is obsessed with the word system, like build your system. That to me, like being plug and play and being able to make a change like at the drop of a hat is really important. And so having something that you can add or subtract to your spread like immediately is awesome.
See, my versatility comes from I'm cheap, and right, like
that works too.
Like it's just, I don't even want to say that I shouldn't say that I'm cheap. I just like, you know what, if I can dual purpose something, I'm always going to dual purpose it. And in this case, I don't have to have those decoys that are tied up with a jerk rig all the time. And so it's just versatility is exactly what it is.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Dave and JJ, I wanted to give you a chance here, Dave, and I'll ask you to do it. And then JJ, you can step in and correct Dave or add anything that you want to say to it. So one of my pet peeves is rigging. And now I've never used Lifetime rigging, so I will be. So I'm going to place an order. So once we get off here, I'm placing an order tonight. I'm going to, because I really wanted to, because it really is one of my pet peeves. I've yet to find rigging that I'm happy with.
Well, look at the rigs that are hanging to the left, or I guess to your right behind you. Like those are freaking, they're all jumbled. They got memory.
Yeah. And that is a big brand. That's a big brand's rigging that I purchased. And you know what? They did what they're supposed to do for a season. But again, I'm not in the business, just like Dave, I'm not in the business of every year. And I know that's from a business standpoint, that's not what you want. You want customers continually coming back, but I want something that's going to work and I'm going to be happy with it. So I am going to be making a purchase of some rigging. But Dave, hear it from you, and then JJ, you chime in on the rigging. What's so special about the rigging, other than I know that it's steel wire rope, right?
Yeah. So JJ already talked about it. There's zero memory, and so what I do is when I'm done hunting for the day, I don't have enough here to show you, but they're all on your clip, and then I'll grab them all and I'll come down, and then about 3/4 of the way down, I'll put a knot in them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just like
and then
a lot
I can
of people
throw them.
do. Yeah.
Just like a lot of people, I'll throw them in the boat. If I don't use them again that season, I don't have to worry about that knot causing an issue with the memory, right? I can unknot it. And I actually just noticed that this rig that's been sitting since the end of our season, it's actually got a knot in it from the last time we used it. And I'll bet you I can take that out and it won't have, right?
Yeah. There may be like a wave or a little bend to it, but it straightens out immediately compared to this guy's called me 3 times. I may have to send a text message. He's one of my photographers.
Yeah, do it.
No problem.
Yeah, do it.
I can keep talking.
No, we'll send him a text.
Yeah, you go for it. So Dave, so while JJ is doing that, so with regards to so I remember someone saying to me one time, and I know Lifetime has has the colored rigs, right? And I've heard, like, I'll give it to duck hunters.
I'm interested to hear the thought on the colored rig.
Yeah, so because duck hunters they're pretty eccentric people, right? And some of the things that fellas complain about just absolutely blows my friggin' mind sometimes. Now, all I've ever used for rigging is that black not the monofilament, but that black plastic shit, right? Now, the one that you're using, Dave, is red.
Nope, it's brown.
Oh, it's brown? Okay.
My camera's just a piece of shit if someone wants to sponsor me with a new camera. But no, there are the different colors. There are the different colors.
So I've got to ask you, Dave, as a person that's actually used them, has the rigging flared any birds? Because I've heard fellas have this friggin' argument that the different color of rigging actually flares birds, and I call bullshit on it.
So I would be willing to test it, but JJ, correct me if I'm wrong. Does anyone in Canada sell the colored ones yet?
Retail doesn't.
Okay.
We can't get them here yet.
Retail doesn't. But we can definitely send you some and give it a test. Okay, I'm so sorry. This is annoying.
No, buddy, you do it.
He's shooting a new box photo for a new species, and it's our photographer, and he's like, I'm out here. Like, I drew him how it needed to look. So
I love this is actually pretty awesome that you're doing this while the show is going on, because it just goes to show just how busy you are. It's awesome. I love it.
Well, I had put my phone on do not disturb. Like I haven't answered anybody else, but this guy's called me 3 times. I knew it was something important. So anyway,
whatever you need to do.
I would say it is. I run only colored rigs. I bring brown rigs out when I've got a photographer that's trying to shoot something really specific, because like I just mentioned, retail only carries brown rigs. So for any of our content that's going to go to retailers, it's got to be on brown rigs. But I hunt with only colored rigs for a lot of reasons, but one of the main ones is to dispel the rumor or the thought that like this, flares birds. Like, I think a lot of people would say like Texas hunting is really tough. Like once the birds get down here, they're very
shot at.
They've seen everything, right?
I've probably missed every single bird that's gone down that way. I don't hit many. So I've got a group of buddies, and I don't get to fun hunt very often, but I inevitably end up bringing the camera, or we record it, or somehow. Like the fun hunt ends up being a little bit of work, but this is the one fun hunt a year that I give myself, and it's down on the Texas coast. We're hunting in gin clear water. Depending on how the tides are, it's 2 to 3 inches deep or 6 inches deep. Absolutely no waves. We're kind of back. We're protected. It's down in Rockport, Texas, and so these birds, they are tough to work. They are tough to fool. They've been shot out the entire year. And that's the one time that I can definitively say, like, this does not flare birds. We don't have a problem. I won't say it, but the last 2 years that we've gone out and done what we went out with a large group of people, and we did exactly what we needed to do. I won't jinx ourselves for years in the future, but, and we're using the brightest color rigs that we've got, the bright green, the bright orange, the bright yellow. Blue's not terribly bright. I don't think red's very bright either. But we're using the brightest stuff that we can just to dispel that rumor. And I don't think it's a problem.
I'm with you, buddy. I really can't see it being.
If a duck is close enough to see the tiny, like the 1 inch that the rig is showing from above, like that bird is too close.
Yeah, it should have been shot.
Yeah, absolutely. But the idea behind the colored rigging, there's lots of different reasons to do it. First, it's just to be different, just to be cool. Like if a guy wants to represent like his school colors or his favorite team or whatever, he can do that. If you want to put different species on different colors, different lengths on different colors, different weights on different colors, a guy might have some 3-ounce rigs that are a certain length, and then some 10-ounce rigs on that same length. If he's got a big setup, if we're talking guides or outfitters or clubs or people who are just serious about it, they've got huge collections of stuff. They want to be able to go and grab stuff off the hook and immediately know that they're doing right. So that's the reason behind the colors. I think a lot of our outfitters, as of late, have started to pick up on the color thing. It just keeps them organized. I was talking to a guy earlier today who runs an outfit. He runs some teal hunts in Texas, but they're based in Stuttgart, Arkansas, and looks like he's going to order between 100 and 150 dozen decoys. They run 10 guides at a time. They have 16 guides total on staff. Every one of those guys has their own boat or their own Can-Am. They've all got kind of their own shed that, like, that guide is responsible for his setup. And he said by the end of the year, like, everybody's stuff is just completely jumbled, and it's like, no, those are mine and that's yours and that's his, and it's a mess. And so he actually talked to me. He was like, when I saw the colored rigging, I knew exactly what I was going to use that for. Like, all my guys are getting different colors. So pretty cool to see.
And that's where more and more of my friends that are picking up on these lifetimes and then when we hunt, I'll bring my couple dozen, he'll bring his couple dozen, then we'll have it all there. That's where, if you guys had like a pink rig, I would be the one. I'd have the pink rig, and then nobody's taking that home. That's mine. Right? You know what I'm saying? We're not looking at the decoy like, oh, is this yours or mine? Well, I brought, perfect. So
exactly. Yep. So we've got 6 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and brown. So that's another deal. Like, I've got a big group of guys that hunt public in Arkansas, and they run like a big crew. Like, there's 15 or 20 guys in a hole at one time. And everybody runs lifetimes, and you've got a guy that runs, all his mallards are green and all his mallards are orange, all his mallards are blue. Like, and it's easy pickup at the end of the day.
Big time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. We should, because I'm not sure if you noticed, JJ, but we do have millions and millions of fans that listen every week to this show.
To the 10 people that reached out and said that they listened to the whole episode, thank you.
No, but we really should mention, Dave, that our good friend Pat Heinrichs and Ryan down at Canadian Waterfowl Supplies here in Ontario, like, they are a big supplier for you guys, right, JJ? And anybody,
they're definitely our biggest in Canada, for sure.
Yeah. So anybody
that's where
that's
I get all
listening,
mine.
Yeah. So anybody that's listening, please go hit up Canadian Waterfowl Supplies if you're curious, or if you're in the area and you want to get your hands on it and see it and up close and personal. You can, right? All you got to do is drive down and talk to Pat and Ryan, and they'll look after you, and let them know that, we sent you and that you listened to it on with JJ talking here. So, it would be silly for us not to do a plug for the boys down there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that really is the key. Like, people can hear us talk about it, they can watch the video, whatever, but until you really get into a store and lay your hands on them, I don't think a guy can really understand it, unless he's going to go into his closet and pick up his pair of Crocs and then compare that to a decoy he's got out in the garage. That's the closest comparison he's going to get. And so getting a guy out to a retailer to touch and feel the product, to mess with them, to pick them up in a bundle of a dozen and realize, like, holy crap, like, this would completely change the game for me. That's the deal. Like, retail is always going to be so important for our brand.
And hopefully I hate to bring up COVID, but hopefully now that restrictions are starting to lift and people are going to be able to get into these stores again and start actually like handling product, hopefully it takes off a bit more for you, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited. We actually just shipped a bunch of stuff to Pat that, just because of COVID, like, we weren't able to get stuff to him for whatever reason here or there. So he's stocked up at the moment for a few things. And he was telling me, interestingly enough, like, a lot of our retailers down here in the States, it's really seasonal, but he said that folks in Canada, like, they're buying duck stuff all year round, which I think is interesting. I think that's amazing. That's awesome. But I was really interested to hear that. He was like, no, I'll take product year round. Like, you keep sending it, whatever you can send me, like, send it to me and I'll sell it.
How have the goose decoys been doing? Like,
so that was just it was so disheartening because of COVID and getting stuff off the boats and all of this. We had sold so many to retail before the season had come. We had retailers all over the country, all of our guys in Canada, everybody was really excited about the goose floater. And what ended up showing up versus what was promised versus what we had projected, all of these things just didn't end up working out. And so the first folks that we took care of were the guys that had pre-ordered on our website. They had paid for it. We had money in our pocket from those guys. So everybody had to get their decoys. Then we had to take care of our guides and outfitters who had sold all of their other decoys. And that's what ends up happening is a guy, he's going to like his ducks. He might buy a dozen or two or whatever. And then he realizes how good they are and how they change his game. So we had, I think we increased our outfitter business this year 264%. So we had a ton of outfitters this year sell their complete spreads. And so we had to get them goose decoys. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to operate their business. And then by the time that was over, it was pretty miraculous. Like, we literally had like 10 or 15 boxes left over. And so I needed some decoys to use for content, to send to photographers and videographers, and for me to hunt with, over the years. And so, or over the season. So no retailers, none of them got goose floaters this year, which was such a bummer because, you know, when you look at the goose floater, the Canada compared to everything else on the market, the lightest goose floater on the market is 43.5 pounds a dozen, 43.6 pounds a dozen. Our decoy comes in at like 19.6 pounds a dozen. So less than half of the next closest competitor, like literally less than half of the next closest competitor. So
like 24 pounds different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely bonkers. You can literally bring, you know, you can double, if not triple the number of floaters that you can bring with you, you know, on your hunt just by running lifetimes versus something else. And by all means, they're expensive, and we're going to hear that, and we're always going to hear that. But I think, you know, there have been brands before us that have come and proved if you build a product that solves a problem that's going to last a lifetime, which ours does, like it's in the name, and it does something better than any other thing before it, like you can charge that. The other thing is too, our stuff is really expensive to make. Like a lot of people might look at our numbers and say, oh, their margin, like they're gouging us, but it's expensive to ship. It was ungodly expensive to ship during COVID. You know, container prices went from $4,000 to $5,000 to $24,000 to $25,000. I think our most expensive container was like $28,000, just obscene. And when you think about what we're shipping, especially with a Canada decoy, like we're shipping boxes of air ostensibly. Like it's just huge boxes, and we can only put, you know, 4 pieces in every one of those boxes. So it's just, I've learned a ton just, you know, since I graduated about business and recognizing like just because it makes sense or people might want it doesn't even make sense for the company to sell it, which is hard. Like our Canada decoy, our margin is just not where we would like it to be, but it's a problem that our consumer has and has been begging us to solve for a long time. So it was worth it for us.
And you touched on something there that every time I post a picture of my hunting rig and showing, you know, here's my kayak, my NuCanoe with my Lifetime, or I post a picture of my Lifetimes and how they're moving, I'll get 3 or 4 out of 5 comments are, those things are too damn expensive, and why would you even, how can you afford that? And you know what? I'm buying this decoy. It's going to last for my kids. And that's, you know, we talk about Real Geese Decoys. They support our show here. And I choose that because for the field, those things are going to last me forever. It's not like the other type that won't. So I'm paying a little bit extra for a lot more use, you know. And a thing that I always say, especially with my career and stuff, is, you know what, taking this training program, it's a short-term pain, but it's a long-term gain. And if you put a little bit of money into it right now, then that thing is going to last you, and your kids will be able to use it too. So, you know what, you're kind of hitting a market where you're also hurting yourself, because every single decoy that you sell is another person that doesn't have to buy that one decoy. Because it's going to last.
That's the funniest thing. It's like, you know, there's a few guys I'm sure that own multiple sizes of a Yeti cooler, but for me, I bought a Yeti 65 in like, I don't know, 2010. I was in high school, and I have not bought a Yeti 65 since, and I'm probably not going to buy one because I've already got it. And similar to like some, you know, a lot of my Sitka stuff, like I bought my Sitka stuff a long time ago, and it works. And if something goes wrong with it, they're going to make it right. They're going to fix it. But those are, you know, few and far between situations. But like, I think those two companies specifically were kind of on the forefront of like helping set the precedent for outdoor brands and other apparel brands and, you know, guns and whatever else. Like if you buy once, you cry once. So
exactly. Yep.
So. JJ, I've got to ask this question now because it just popped to me. Well, is Lifetime planning on being at the Easton Sportsman Show in Maryland in November of this year? And
So
the reason why I'm asking is because I'm heading down to hunt with Jeff Coates. And
Are
it
you
would
really?
be, yeah. So
Okay.
we're heading down in November. I really want to see the Easton Sportsman Show. We don't have that up in Canada.
Have you ever been?
No, never been.
Okay.
So I want to go down. I'm going to go down and hang out with Jeff, one of the boys from the show. He's going to come. I'm trying to get Dave to come, but he's too important at his job and he can't.
Oh,
Damien thinks that if he gets you guys going, I'll be going too, and that's what he's doing right now. That's a dick move, Damien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was in Easton 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before COVID, whatever that was.
Yeah.
But I haven't been back since. I think they did a little something last year. But it was all those shows and everything. It was too speculative to try to plan out a season,
Right.
and we had so much content to shoot. So I didn't make it out there, but especially now having a diver and having Jeff involved like he is, I do see a world where I might find myself in Easton, in which case, Dave,
Dave,
you should make the trek, and we can take Jeff's boat out. We've got plenty of room on the boat.
Oh yeah. So
the world's largest duck boat, I think it is.
That's right.
So we're planning in November, brother.
Yeah. So we're going down. Me and Mark are making a week out of it. We're going to do the decoy museum, do Easton, go hunt with Jeff for a couple days, spend some time in the local area. I grew up on the Atlantic Ocean, so I really miss the salt water. So it's going to be a time, as I say. So it'd be awesome if Lifetime is there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna need to look up the dates and try to make some plans. Because I was there 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was, and we were just working the whole time. So I didn't even end up getting to go hunt, which was such a miss. Like, now that I look back on it, and I'd love to have a little bit more education on the diver stuff. Like, you can watch YouTube videos all day, but like, until you've done it and felt it and seen it, you can't really get it. So I probably ought to scoot up there and do that. We might make a plan.
There you go. Boys, we're well over an hour. And I know, it did go quick. It was awesome.
I had so much more to talk about.
Well, JJ's going to have to come back on again.
You can hit us. No, we're good. I'm telling you, y'all made some adjustment for me. All is well. Like, whatever we need to do.
Okay. Hey.
No, so the issue is, JJ, that with our podcast audience, if we go over like the 1 hour 10 mark is kind of the max where we start losing the customer base.
They say, all right, we're sick of it.
Yeah.
We can do a part
Shut up, Dave.
sometime. We can do
I think we should do a part 2. Like this.
I think so.
It's been a good time. So
yeah, it has been great. So everybody, as you know, we only talk about the brands that we love and the ones that we've actually used. Dave, just like Brendan Veerman and all the lads that are here in Ontario that are currently rocking Lifetime decoys, it's because we've used it. Dave has used it. He loves the brand and he's promoting it. Pat Heinrichs down at Canadian Waterfowl Supplies, he's the dude. And listen, we are in Canada where everything is more expensive. Listen, if you need decoys, why not buy the lighter ones? It's going to save you on shipping. Like, that's just a no-brainer. It just makes sense to me. So order Lifetime decoys. You'll save money on the shipping because you don't have to wait. Listen, this is who we are. Dave, any final words, buddy? We'll let JJ end it. But
JJ, I get made fun of all the time for being busy, and I'm finally glad to see someone that's busier than me. So
I don't know about busier than you. I'm sure I didn't manage the deal perfectly, but we got a lot of stuff going right now, and we're super small. I mean, I won't divulge how small we are because we like to be perceived bigger than we are, but I wear a lot of hats. Everybody that works with us wears a ton of hats. So I appreciate it.
I don't brag about how small I am either. So, but no, thanks a lot for coming on, and hopefully we can get you on again, and hopefully we can get you up to Canada for a hunt, because that would be.
You bet. I would love that. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. JJ, any final words, buddy?
I don't think so. I just appreciate you having me on, tolerating me, listening to me drone on, and for being big fans of the product. Seriously, like that's what gets me fired up working for Lifetime is I know that definitively we're doing something different that nobody else has done before, and we're solving people's problems. And so for you giving us a platform like this and being willing to talk about it outside of the podcast, like to your hunting buddies, to, you know, the guys that matter, our real consumer, means a lot. So thank y'all so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This has kind of been self-serving because so many people ask questions about Lifetimes, and I was like, you know what? If we do a podcast episode, I can just respond with, "Oh, just watch this. It's only an hour."
Here's the
right?
link.
Yeah,
exactly.
here's the link. That's right.
Know. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, everybody. This was episode 86 of the Union 0430. As we always say, surround yourself with good people. Good things will happen. And listen, we are as advertised. We're not experts. We don't pretend to be professionals. We're just a bunch of friends that love one another's company, and we love talking about shooting birds. So JJ, Lifetime Decoys, thank you so much for coming on and taking some time out of your day to hang out with us. Buy Lifetime Decoys. You won't be disappointed.
Absolutely.
I'm ordering tonight. So big love, everybody. Let us know if you got any questions. We'll fire them right off to JJ as soon as we get them. Big love.
Love it.